Oregonian. I'm also the host of our weekly news podcast, Beat Check with the Oregonian. Thanks for tuning in. I am going to talk a little bit about a few races of import before being joined by some of my colleagues. And I wanted to give you a heads up. It is, 10 to 7. Polls close in an hour here in Oregon. You still have time to get those ballots in. And then at 10:30-ish tonight, come back to the Facebook or YouTube page for a beat check with the Oregonian Roundtable. We'll be talking about the Portland mayor's race, Secretary of State's race, and my race that I'm covering, the Metro Transportation Bond. So that'll be around 10:30. I hope you come back. And if you don't have time to join us tonight, if you're a subscriber to Beat Check, which you can get anywhere you listen to podcasts, we'll have the podcast conversation for you there. Again, kind of the big takeaways from an interesting election night in Oregon and in America. So before I am joined with some of my colleagues, I wanted to talk about the two of the biggest races tonight. Portland mayor's race and Portland city council races. I will not be joined by Everton Bailey Jr., our esteemed Portland City Hall reporter right now, but I can tell you a little bit of the lay of the land of those. We really don't know what to expect with the mayor's race. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler and sustainability consultant Sarah Iannarone have been, according to polls, in a very close race. Wheeler is trying to be the first incumbent to be reelected to the mayor's office in Portland City Hall since Vera Katz. It's not a job that people have either sought for a second term or won. And so that's going to be a very interesting race. There's also a write-in campaign from Teresa Rayford, who is a Portland-born woman who ran in the primary and was unsuccessful, but has made seemingly a lot of noise in the write-in campaign. So a lot of interest in that race. We'll have coverage from Everton once results are in. Also, there's a city council race between Chloe Udaley, the incumbent, and Mingus Maps, a former employee of the city. Another very close race. We don't really have a clear indication at this time, one way or another, which way that's going to go. Udaley was swept into office, sweeping out incumbent Steve Novick back in 2016 on kind of a renters' rights platform. And she's lived up to a lot of those promises during her 4-year tenure. But she's also made some calls that prompted Mingus Maps to run into against her, mainly her effort to kind of reorganize Portland's neighborhood association. So that's going to be a very interesting race. Mr. Maps, if he were to win, would be just the third African-American male after Dick Bogle and Charles Jordan. And then obviously Joanne Hardesty is currently on the council. So that's a race we will be eyeing very closely. Everton will be covering that, and stay tuned to OregonLive.com later. As for my other job when I'm not podcasting, the transportation beat, you might have seen a payroll tax if you live in the Portland metro area, the Metro Regional Government's service area. Seen that on your ballot. That is the biggest transportation measure in the region's history. It almost rivals in total cost the 2017 statewide transportation package. It is highlighted by the light rail extension to Bridgeport Village and safety projects on 82nd Avenue, TV Highway, McLaughlin Boulevard, as well as bus rapid transit projects on those corridors, and TriMet passes for all high school students. This is something that has been in the works for years. We also really don't know how that's going to land. The measure has not polled well historically before the pandemic to the level that is necessary typically for big tax and spending measures to pass. It also attracted huge opposition during the campaign season from some of the largest employers in the state, Nike, Intel, have really opened their wallets to degrees that are not common for either of those big corporations for local races. As of today, Nike has contributed $500,000 to try and fight this payroll tax, which, if it were to pass, would fund those projects I talked about. And it would also it would impose a payroll tax of up to 0.75% on employers, with companies with 25 or fewer employees being exempt. So that is really it's a huge measure. It's $5 billion in taxes that would be raised over more than a decade, and then the projects are contingent on federal funding too. So we're talking $7 billion of potential investment, both in projects and programs in the Portland area. Or if it goes down, we're talking about a kind of a compromise scenario. Who knows? The business community and Metro, in particular, Metro Council President Lynn Peterson, are going to have to hash something out, I should say, if it doesn't pass. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, before we go to my colleague, Eder Campuzano, I want to talk really briefly about two other Metro Council races. Here in Portland, Metro Council District 5, you've got a pretty interesting race between former House Majority Leader down in Salem, Mary Nolan, who also has a ton of experience at Portland's bureaucracy, leading the sewer bureau. And she is her challenger is Chris Smith, who is a very long time civic activist, particularly in land use planning and transportation circles. Their campaigns have been kind of different. Smith has raised a lot of grassroots money. Nolan has outraised him almost double at this point, $156,000, and she's got more of the establishment connections. If I had to guess at this point, I would say that Nolan would be the favorite because of her establishment credentials, as well as some of the money that she's raised. But you never know. If there's a blue wave, it could sweep Chris Smith in. Obviously, they're both Democrats, but he is running on more of a climate activist agenda. And then the other Metro Council race, we may not know the results of tonight. That's Metro District 3, kind of the suburban areas around Tigard. And that is Garrett Rosenthal, who's a sustainability consultant, and Tom Anderson, who's a Tigard City council member and a real estate broker. We might not know results because of some machine breaking in the Clackamas County Elections Bureau. So we're not sure that we're going to be able to call that at this point. Tom Anderson is likely the favorite there, given that he has endorsements from the Oregonian editorial board and is more of a he has the support of mayors down there as well. But Garrett Rosenthal has a lot of support from legislators in the area and has the track record of working in waste management and land use planning. So again, maybe that's something we don't call tonight. We will see. But we have some other large measures like the Portland Public School Bond that we are going to bring in our expert on that one, Eder Campuzano, who covers PPS for us. So through the magic of technology, I will be joined by Eder. Oh, there he is.
There I am.
Thank you, my friend. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. I just went on a quick 10-minute power walk to get myself amped up to, start calling these races in an hour? Oh.
I know. It's crazy. We're 1 hour out. You still have time if you're listening, if you're on your phone or whatever, you can still drop off your ballot. Make sure you sign it. But Eder, you've got this PPS bond. Can you just give us a lay of the land on this measure, how, its cost, what it's going to do, and kind of the whole shebang?
For sure. So this is sort of a watered down version of a $1.4 billion bond that Portland Public Schools was thinking about pre-pandemic. The district has kind of pledged to update pretty much all of its buildings, starting with the high schools on a kind of 30-year plan. And this is the next phase in that plan. So in 2017, voters approved a $790 million measure that was meant to kind of drastically remake a few high schools and Kellogg Middle School. And this is a measure that would pour $1.2 billion into an effort to drastically remake Jefferson High School, the only sort of predominantly Black high school in all of Oregon, and also create within buildings surrounding Jefferson this Center for Black Student Excellence that was sort of the blueprints were co-created with the Albino Vision Trust, after the pandemic sort of set in, when PPS was originally thinking of remaking its 3 remaining high schools that haven't seen a bond yet. It sort of scaled down those plans to just include Jefferson, and also pour millions into updated curriculum and technology to handle this new load of distance learning that every single student in the district is going to be in through at least late January.
Right. And refresh our listeners or viewers' memory. That 2017 bond, it didn't go exactly according to plan, right? There's a little snafu there with getting those projects out the door.
Yeah, so there were certain cost estimates, right, that were that didn't come in at what the district was expecting, and the number crunchers that the district were expecting, and that total shortfall, I guess you could call it, was about $250 million, so almost $250 million. And so the district has basically gone ahead and when they found out about that discrepancy, what the school board decided to do was, instead of scaling back the projects that it had promised voters, they all decided to say, well, we're going to go ahead with the schedules as we pitched them and roll the cost overruns into a new bond. And so a good $238 million of this bond will go toward finishing the projects, or finish funding the projects at Benson High, which, that's a pretty sizable chunk of what voters are going to be weighing in on tonight.
Do you have any sense of whether that, obviously when you're dealing with these huge projects, things like this happen, this is not out of the realm of, normal operations, I guess, in public sector bonds. I mean, things like this happen, but do you have a sense that this is going to damage the chances at all, or is this expected to pass tonight?
It hasn't really seemed like it. I'm privy to quite a lot of chatter, and I haven't seen a really organized no campaign coming out against this bond. I was just touching base with Julia Brim Edwards. She's a school board member, and she's kind of the chair of the campaign to push this bond forward, and she's telling me that they feel really optimistic. Even polls that the district commissioned in the middle of the summer, and follow-up polls that OPB did earlier, see voters, or even I guess registered voters, really backing it. And I think it all goes back to, what I've heard a lot of is people saying that despite the cost overrun situation, the buildings in the district are in dire need of repair and updating and upgrading, and that's really what seems to be driving a lot of voters' decisions.
Let's talk about Jefferson a little bit, because anyone who has been past it or has been in the building knows that it needs some attention and needs some love. There's got to be, I would imagine, some excitement about that school being at the center of this.
Oh, for sure. I mean, back when the district was sort of rethinking what a bond would look like, after the pandemic hit, and after they got the bad financial news of, what the state budget and the state school fund might look like, every single the principal of each of the 9 high schools in the district signed a letter saying, hey, we know times are tough, but if there's going to be a bond this year, Jefferson's got to go first. It's been underserved for too long, and this building, this community, and the community around this building is in dire need of what, a potential upgrade would bring to this historically Black neighborhood.
We have obviously issues of racial injustice have been at the forefront of Portlanders' minds, and there have been demonstrations throughout the year for that are related to this. Can you talk about the Black Centers for Excellence and albino vision trusts, and why they're involved, or why they're excited about that, and what exactly that means, that Black
Oh, for
Center
sure.
record.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So there are, plenty of schools that surround Jefferson High, and in that North Portland neighborhood. And really what this Center for Black Student Excellence idea would do is pump millions into some upgrades, some construction work into those buildings, but mostly programming, right? So it would provide for contracts for, community groups to come in, much like SEI already does, much like other groups like that already do, to do hands-on work with students and give them that extra boost that they need, because both the district and the school board last year sort of adopted this mission to drastically boost academic achievement for Black and Latino and migrant students within the district, and this in particular goes right along with that.
Kind of sticking on that theme, I know that some of your reporting, it was from like cradle to, is it to diploma, or maybe I'm missing the second part of,
yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But let's go to a different issue, the preschool for all issue, which I was hoping you could talk about that a little bit. That's something that voters were also presented with. What are the odds of that passing? Do you have any sense of that?
Right. So once again, those same polls that I mentioned also see the preschool for all measure coming out pretty far ahead in the yes camp versus the no camp. And I mean, the measure itself is sort of a compromise measure between this campaign that called itself Universal Preschool Now and a county-backed campaign that's been in the wings and kind of been drafted for about 2 years now by Multnomah County Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson. And that's the Preschool for All initiative. And so where those two campaigns kind of diverged was in what that tax rate would be. The Universal Preschool Now measure would have been something on the order of 3.9% income tax on incomes above $125,000. And so those folks actually passed an initiative petition, gathered something like 32,000 signatures.
Wow.
And this was in the middle of a pandemic. So, that just shows you how much support they were able to garner to get this thing at least referred to voters. And from that point, once it reached that threshold, and they only had to have like 23,000 to make it to the ballot, and collected well enough above that. But once that went to the County Board of Commissioners, the county board sort of tinkered with it and came to a consensus with the folks who were running that campaign on the 1.5% tax on incomes of $125,000 or more, which is meant to create this universal, every 3 and 4-year-old in the county by 2026 will be eligible for free preschool, basically. And that's the heart of the measure right there.
Well, it's something that would, as someone who has 2 kids who are of that age, I mean, the transformative nature of that is really, I think, hard for a lot of people maybe to understand what that would mean to families if it were to pass. It's truly astounding.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I spoke to the campaign, they were saying that it's really, the pandemic, the 1-2 punch of the pandemic and the protests against racial injustice and systemic racism really galvanized folks to say like, oh yeah, no, we need a better system, is what they were telling me. And that seems to be what drove much of that signature gathering.
Well, anything else, Eder, that you would want to say, or I should have asked you? Thanks for taking time as we kind of approach the big time here.
Right. No, I think we covered it all. And if you haven't turned in your ballot, I would say, hey, 50 minutes, go out and do it.
Yeah, go find those official Dropbox sites. And Eder, thanks a lot. I appreciate your insight as always.
Always a pleasure.
All right, so we're going to transition to another brilliant Oregonian reporter, Hillary Baroud, our state politics reporter. There she is.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for joining the show here. We are less than an hour now. So we've got a couple of things we could talk about. We could talk about the AG's race, but I don't know that there's going to be much to talk about there.
Well, yeah, you might as well touch on it. So Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, she's running for a 3rd term. And if she wins this, which it's pretty likely, she would be on track to set, I think she would maybe be the 3rd longest serving Oregon Attorney General because she actually started a little bit early when Kroger stepped down. And
right.
So not too much of a surprise at this point. That was kind of settled last year when it turned out that she just wasn't going to face any challenge from within the Democratic Party. Oregon's former House Majority Leader, Jennifer Williamson, who's a lawyer, was thinking about running, but ultimately opted not to. And I won't get too sidetracked on that. We'll talk about the
Yeah, we could talk about that for a while. But
Yeah.
so we're going to go ahead and you should feel confident penciling in the AG, Ellen Rosenblum, as the winner tonight. It seems like that's a likely outcome.
Yes. And if she's not, she is running against a non-lawyer who is a Republican this year. So that would be kind of challenging for him to do the job.
Yeah, this would be a pretty significant upset. Okay, so let's go to Secretary of State. Shamia Fagan, the Democrat on the ticket, Kim Thatcher, the Republican on the ticket. This is what should we expect tonight? I mean, this is the second in line to, if Governor Brown, which we've had happen recently, she were to leave or take another job or retire, they would be governor. So what can we expect from this?
Well, and a lot of other important stuff that the Secretary of State does in Oregon. Of course, on a night like tonight, it's good to remember that is the state's chief elections official. So that person oversees elections broadly. You have your county clerks around the state in the 36 counties who are actually administering those elections. But the Secretary of State plays a lot of roles in that, including making some of the calls on what gets onto the ballot. At least at some point in the process, it can get litigated out and stuff. But so elections officer, they oversee state audits. They sit on a state land board that makes some decisions about state public lands. So this year we have Senator Shamia Fagan is the Democrat in the race. She is a state senator from the Portland area. And then we have Kim Thatcher, who is a Republican, also a longtime state senator, longer in the state legislature than Fagan, and she's from the Salem area. And they haven't, I wouldn't say that they've articulated policy platforms that are hugely different, but instead Fagan has tried to set herself apart from Thatcher based on Thatcher's, I guess, unwillingness to distance herself from President Trump and everything that he said about Oregon and other states that do mail-in voting. And
he said a few things about that. Yeah,
he said a few things. Yeah. Fagan has hugely outraised Thatcher. It's a 3-1 situation right now with Fagan having raised, I mean, as of about a week ago, due to the lag in reporting that we have in Oregon, about $3 million. Thatcher's raised about $1 million. A lot of public employee union support there. Oregon Democrats really want to recapture the Secretary of State position, not only because it's proven that, or we've been reminded that that person is next in line to be governor if the governor steps down, but just the important role in elections and everything. And it's the only statewide office that Democrats don't hold in Oregon right now.
So sitting, 45 minutes out from close here, what's the sense? I mean, there are more registered Democrats in Oregon than Republicans.
Right.
I mean, does it seem likely at this point that Shamia Fagan comes out? Do you have any polls that point one way or the other?
I have not seen any polls. Myself, I think that probably that edge would be hard for Thatcher to overcome. We did have a unique situation back in 2016, obviously, where the Republican back then, Dennis Richardson, who was pretty darn socially conservative. So for Oregon, that was kind of a surprise that he came in and won that. So obviously it can happen. Richardson's campaign manager back then, I'd spoken to her about a week ago about how he was able to make that happen. She thinks that he was just able to make that appeal to people that, hey, you've got so many Democrats in Oregon, you control the legislature, the governor's office. Don't you want to put some check on that power? And he succeeded in that. And that was, of course, just coming right after we had our governor have to step down because of
John Kitzhaber.
Influence peddling allegations. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, Oregonians, I guess, have lived with 4 years. Obviously, Mr. Richardson passed away due to cancer, but his successor, Bev Clarno, we've had Republican leadership, and you know, there haven't been any infringements on voting rights in Oregon or anything like that. It's been steady as she goes, and audits have continued, and so yeah. So I guess we'll see. Obviously, Oregonians can surprise, and we'll see what happens on that. It's obviously a very important race. But let's go to the legislature itself, Hillary. Republicans have walked out, 3 times recently, for various
3,
reasons.
not counting a mini walkout that happened in the House where they just didn't show up for an evening vote. But that was, we'll say 3 solid walkouts in the last 18 months.
And Democrats have the supermajority in both chambers, but it's not enough. I guess, how far away are they from having the
walkout proof?
The walkout proof, and is that something that is doable tonight?
So I am a little bit bearish on that. Probably, I think that from what one person had told me, they kind of got a lot of their big pickups. The Democrats did 2 years ago or more, the last couple cycles, because the House seats turn over every 2 years. And they did pick up a number of seats in the metro area. Going out to Hood River, they picked up a seat out there from a Republican. So now they're coming back and defending some of those seats. And they actually have, due to a couple of longtime lawmakers on the South Coast who are leaving, Senator Arnie Roblin and then Representative Caddy McCune, they have a couple seats that they really have to fight hard to defend. And it's possible that that House seat on the southern, kind of south central coast, Coos Bay, basically that area, that they could lose that. At the same time, there is a Republican who, well, she's in Bend, and that district has flipped a number of years ago now from Republican to Democrat. And the advantage is almost 2-1 there, Democrats against Republican registered voters. So I think that the Republican Party is not feeling super optimistic they're going to be able to hold on to that. So we could see a situation where we just get the status quo, but with some different districts.
Different faces, right? The Bend race is that's Sherry Helt, right? Who has kind of she has bucked the trend of some Republicans in Oregon, where she's actively distanced herself from the president, and that might not be enough to save her seat.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out, where you get some of the people that were more moderate, and she did not walk out with House Republicans this year. Whether or not that was a calculated move, knowing she was going to be in a tough race. And some of the most moderate people in the state, then they end up maybe losing their seats in the end, and you get people that are more on the far left or far right, because she is pro-choice. She has rebuked Trump publicly. She supported a vaccine mandate that was politically tough for some Democrats as well as Republicans.
Well, will be interesting to see. And I know you had a great story today that readers should go to OregonLive.com/politics. Check out regarding the coast seats, because those are historically, you know, there have been some Democrats obviously hold on to them, but it's very, very close, right, in terms of registration. And
that one was even on the North Coast, but it's a different area of the state, or unique politically for sure. And there's a lot of industry out there, whether it's forestry or just other Coke industries out there. And so you get some voters who might be a lot of union members, but also a lot of people who are sensitive to environmental legislation that might impact industry.
Well, you've got a lot to cover. Thanks for carving out some time to talk to us. And I guess
always fun.
Yep, and we'll see you later tonight. I think maybe in about 3 hours.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go to Jeff Manning now to talk about some congressional races. Jeff Manning. There he is.
Are we okay? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you just fine.
Thanks, Jeff, for
Hi,
taking
Adrian.
time. So, Peter DeFazio, is this really the fight of his life? Do we have a sense politically whether the dean of Oregon's congressional delegation is really in danger tonight?
Well, if money is any indication, he is. Alex Skarlatos raised more than Peter did, at least as of October 14th, the last deadline for reporting. 4.4 million versus just under 4, and which is pretty amazing given the experience gap here. We're talking about a 28-year-old man who never held office, failed in his bid to get to the Douglas County Commission. And now he's, given DeFazio all that DeFazio can handle.
So people might not be as familiar with Alex Skarlatos as you are, or folks down in Douglas County or Lane County. Refresh our memory. Who is this? Who is this man?
It's a great story. He was on a train in France, and he and 2 other members of the military or National Guard Americans managed to foist a shooter. There's the versions differ as to whether this was a terrorist thing or not, but they went up and at great risk to themselves and stopped this thing before it happened, saved a lot of lives, and they were justly celebrated as heroes.
And he's been, since then, hasn't he been on Dancing with the Stars, or am I making that up?
He came in third. Hey,
that's pretty good.
Yeah. I saw one clip where he, ripped open his shirt, and it was quite the sexy scene.
Well, I'm sure that's available on the internet if people want to follow up. But okay, so he ran for Douglas County Commission when? Just recently?
2 years ago.
Okay, and unsuccessful, but now here he is. I guess this captivating personal story, or is there something else that's going on? DeFazio's been there forever. Is that part of the problem?
I think that is part of the problem. It's also a very, very interesting district. It is the liberal bastions of Eugene and Corvallis, and then it's Douglas County, Roseburg, and the South Coast.
Right.
And it's a complete schizophrenic district, and they're going in opposite directions. And DeFazio's always had Corvallis and Eugene on his side. And some people think that South Lane County is going the way of Douglas County. And, still, if you carry those cities, you are probably going to carry the 4th district. But DeFazio's been around a long time, 30 plus years, and reliably liberal D. And that's the tougher sell in the 4th district now.
And he obviously put on my beat hat. He's the chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He's been chasing that long sought infrastructure week bill with President Trump that was on and off and on and off. And but he's in a position of power, right, in the House.
Yeah, it looks like he's not going to be in the position of power he was really hoping for, the way tonight's going. But he's got incredible seniority, and clout is all about seniority in the House. And the 4th district would be losing a lot of that. You got a junior guy coming in, facing all the hurdles of the first-year congressman.
All right, so we'll be tracking that one later tonight. What else are you paying attention to in terms of congressional races?
Well, I'm looking at all of them. They're all sort of a walk for the incumbents, barring some enormous surprise in terms of money, in terms of attention, in terms of just love from the National Party. There are a bunch of unknowns. One is a former lawyer turned fitness coach, and one's a realtor, and they just don't have the chops to compete with the incumbents.
Well, we should note that a powerful Republican, Greg Walden, longtime congressman, his seat is up for grabs, and that is going to go to, by all counts, Republican Cliff Bentz. It seems likely to take that seat.
Yeah, I thank you for reminding me. He's this is a feel-good story. Cliff Bentz, a really effective representative of his district in Eastern Oregon in the state legislature, takes on Newt Bueller and Jason Atkinson in the Republican primary. Surprised the heck out of me when he won, but he did, going away.
Yeah,
and it looks like he is certainly the favorite to win this seat in Congress.
Yeah, if we had before you were on, I was talking to Hillary Baroud, and obviously Cliff was a state senator of really well respected on both sides of the aisle. I would say a guy who not an ideologue, a policy guy, and obviously of that region. So that'll be one to watch. What about across the river, Jeff? Are you also? Forgive me, I should know this. Are you tracking Jamie Herrera Butler and Carolyn Long 2.0 here?
Not really, but so I am not an authority on that race at all. I've if this is a replay, right, of 4 years ago and
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So that should be. I don't know if it'll be a replay or not. I mean, maybe there are some Trump coattails to ride here.
Well, so when you kind of take stock of everything here in Oregon, what, I know obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the ballots, but what do you have any big thoughts at the beginning that you're just, trying to make sense of as we wait for the results?
Well, I think that the 4th district is, I don't want to be too cosmic here. I don't know what it's emblematic of exactly, but you have a young, untested Republican who represents something new and represents at least, a non-Democrat, which in the 4th district is someone who's serious. And, Peter DeFazio has tried to portray Scarlatos as this know-nothing ideologue from the hard right. And, Scarlatos has said some things that raise questions about, are you really not in favor of the minimum wage? Are you really not in favor of any new anti-COVID-19 programs? But, we'll see. We'll see if those statements hurt him in a couple minutes.
Well, a lot to keep track of. Thank you, Jeff. We will, I think you're being tabbed for later tonight, so I'll see you in a few hours.
I'll see you.
All right. So we're going to bring on Samantha Swindler here, and she is going to take the reins of this podcasting. Hey, it's not a podcast, it's a video, this video platform. And I neglected to mention, we have some folks who are wearing masks in case you didn't see the earlier stream, because we've got folks like Sam down in the office. I'm in my basement. I don't need to wear a mask, but it's all yours, Sam.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. I am taking over the second half of the hour where we're talking to reporters while we have them before the polls close at 8 o'clock and they are all busy writing their polling stories. And I've got Amy Green with me.
Hi.
We're going to talk about, this is maybe not usually such an interesting contested race. This is judges races.
Yes. I'm covering tonight the Multnomah County Circuit Court judges race. It's the only contested race in Multnomah County Circuit Court. This year, the primary and the November election had about 14 judicial positions up for vote. Only one of them was contested. That's pretty typical. Across the state this year, there were and are about 60 judicial positions up for vote, and about 8 of them are contested. So yeah, it's usually just a easy thing, a procedural thing. There's only one candidate, but this year in the race for the seat vacated, the one open seat, it's Rima Gandor versus Adrian Brown. It actually started out with 6 candidates in the primary. That was narrowed down to the top 2 vote getters, and tonight voters will decide who wins.
Was the reason for so much interest in this seat because it was being vacated?
Yes.
Is that sort of an unusual thing?
Yeah. There's a little bit of controversy around it that judges tend to retire somewhere in their term. And so the governor will appoint a replacement. In this case, that's what happened. And there were 6 candidates willing to jump in for the open seat. But I would say it's about 50-50. If you look at those 8 contested judicial races this year, in some cases, there was an incumbent, and the candidate, the challenger, was just thought they could do better. And in some cases, they did win in the primary.
This seems like a pretty competitive race. Both of the candidates have a lot of endorsements. Can you tell me a little bit about the 2 women who are seeking this seat?
Yeah. So one way that I can tell that they both really, really want this seat and are trying is from the money that they've raised. Adrian Brown is a U.S. assistant attorney. I should also say that both these candidates have shared a lot about their personal lives and their backgrounds. So I'll tell you about that. That's a little bit unusual to see judges being so open about their lives. But I think in this race, it was like you say, a hotly contested race, and they really wanted voters to know more about them to help them make a decision. Adrian Brown talks about how she was raised by a single mother with her sister, and money was tight. She joined the ROTC in college to pay for her college education. She worked as a military lawyer for a while. Later on, she became a U.S. assistant attorney, and she's focused on civil rights. She was an integral player in a federal lawsuit against Portland police, saying that they used excessive force against mentally ill people, and that it resulted in a lot of reforms. Rima Gandor she is an Arab American. She immigrated to this country. She said she knows what it's like to witness governments that benefit the rich and the powerful, and that one thing she loves about the United States judicial system is that ideally it shouldn't benefit the rich and the powerful. And she is a civil lawyer. She runs her own practice. She works on all sorts of cases, personal injury, insurance, business litigation. But she's also proud to point out that she also does free legal work for issues involving immigrants, like when Trump banned people from certain countries from coming into the United States. She represented some of them, and she's represented some dreamers. So it's a job that pays $147,000 a year, and both of them have raised far more than that to get the job, $226,000 for Adrian Brown and $175,000 for Rima Gandor.
Is that unusual for a judge's race like this?
It is a lot of money. I mean, especially it seems a little odd. You'll see incumbents who aren't in contested races raise some money, but of course it's nowhere near this amount.
We could even step back a little bit more basic for the average voter who maybe doesn't spend a lot of time even looking at the judges that are listed on the ballot, because so many times it's an uncontested race. What does a Multnomah County Circuit Court judge do? Like, what kind of cases would go before a circuit judge like that? This is criminal cases in Multnomah County. I mean, tell us a little bit, really basic stuff.
Mix. They could do criminal cases, lawsuits, so civil suits. There could be, there's a wide variety of jobs. Some judges are family law judges. There's a lot of unelected judges called referees who will preside over traffic court, where the public may be more likely to come in contact with them, or landlord-tenant issues. Being a judge, I think, and what a judge does from day to day is kind of difficult for voters to get a grasp of and understand, because I think that judges traditionally don't do public speaking or talk about their jobs. They don't talk about their cases. They're not supposed to talk about their cases. And that makes it really difficult for voters to make a decision. When I fill out my ballot, of course, I know the judges because I know them all. There's about 3 dozen in Multnomah County. But if you don't, I mean, I can imagine it's like when I see Soil and Water Conservation District on the ballot and I have to choose between 2 people, I'm like, I know nothing about them, or I don't even know what makes a good candidate. I think what makes a good judicial candidate is somebody who, I mean, obviously honest, integrity, good record, and a breadth of experience, that they've done civil law, that they've done criminal law, or they're educated about it. That one other thing I like just as a citizen is a judge who can explain their thinking. They can explain the decisions they make when they rule from the bench, that they can let people know why and how the law applied to that case. It's really helpful. And you'll find that some judges are rather shy or just not chatty about that, and others are. And I enjoy hearing what went through their mind, the legal arguments.
Especially if we as citizens are going to be voting on these people to retain their job. Yeah, it's very helpful to hear those explanations.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about reporting, is to watch a case from the start and hear the arguments from attorneys on both sides, and then hear how the judges rule. It's kind of anticlimactic, I think, when you just hear a ruling or they issue a written ruling and you're like, well, what went behind that? Like, I disagree with that. I want to know. Or maybe I agree with it.
Are there, have you gotten a sense that these 2 candidates have different judicial viewpoints, or that they might rule in things differently? Or is there anything that sort of distinguishes their opinions on stuff?
Yeah, that's what makes it so difficult, because you want to say, well, what do you think about police use of force or police brutality, or what do you think about frivolous lawsuits? What do you think a frivolous lawsuit is? Or you want to ask them these hot button issues, and most often they'll just shy away. They don't want to be seen as being biased, and that's legitimate. You don't want to say, I think that's a silly law. You have to follow the law as a judge. I think one interesting thing, though, it's almost like going out on a limb these days when judicial candidates do share things about their background. I mean, and it's not startling, or it's not controversial at all in Portland to say, I'm an immigrant. And actually, I should say Rima Gandor is a Muslim, to say I support immigrant rights by her pro bono representation of dreamers and of people who are affected by Trump's country immigration or visitation ban to the United States. For her to say those things, that's not controversial in Portland, but maybe in some parts of Oregon it would, and you wouldn't get votes for saying that. Or with Adrian Brown, to talk about her upbringing and having a single mom. Those are things that voters say, wow, she's a survivor. Like, she's tough. She made a life for herself under somewhat difficult circumstances.
They didn't have a candidate debate or anything in this race, did they?
Not that I know of.
I would think that you would know.
If they did, I missed it.
I've read your reporting on this, but I don't know that. Yeah, voters have really. This is a difficult race because it's not like a traditional campaign platform, like you said, where you're just putting your views and opinions about everything out.
Well, and
to the
I
voters.
think that given, if you look at their endorsements, I mean, it seems like you can't go wrong. I mean, they both have good endorsements from both sides. And in some cases, they have the same people endorsing them, like former Oregon Supreme Court Chief Justice Paul Jimenez endorsed them both. And that's something I had not been paying attention to, but I had never noticed before, that someone would endorse both candidates.
That is seemingly unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it goes to show that they both have a lot of respect, and that doesn't help people decide, but their votes are, well, in 19 minutes, their votes are due.
We will probably know something very soon about this race because it's only a Multnomah County race, and Multnomah County has been pretty quick to count. So with that, I will probably let you go and start getting ready to write your story. Again, the polls are closing in 19 minutes. We'll probably have election results for some of these races pretty soon after 8 o'clock. So thank you so much, Aimee. We are now going to be joined with Lizzie Acker. No, we are not going to be doing that. We have Ted. Hi, Ted. You're not Lizzie. I see you, but I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, now I can hear you. Sorry about that.
That's so good. Can you hear me now?
I can
we're
hear
good.
you now.
Excellent.
Ted, you were covering the very thrilling and exciting race for Oregon Treasurer.
Yes, I
And
am.
it seems so familiar to me.
It does sound a little familiar. So this year's race is actually a reprise of 2016's matchup between Tobias Reed, who's a Portland Democrat and won in 2016, and a former Lake Oswego city councilor and a financial analyst, Jeff Goodman. The last time around, Reed edged Goodman by about 2.5%, which is actually very, very close in a state where Democrats have had firm control over most statewide offices for a while, with the exception of Dennis Richardson's win at Secretary of State in the last election. But there were also a couple of independent candidates, one pretty strong in the 2016 matchup. Chris Telfer is a former rep from, or maybe a senator from Bend, and she's a CPA, and she ran pretty strong and took 9% of the vote. But that was a pretty close race. I'm not sure that's going to be a replay this time, just based on the fact that Reed has now, I mean, he's a 5-term state legislator. He's got a lot of name recognition. He has a 5-fold funding advantage over Goodman. And of course, just the registration advantage on the part of Democrats is really strong. So at least the expectation would be that Reed would have a pretty strong showing here, but I guess anything's possible.
So for voters who maybe aren't super familiar with this, what does a treasurer even do?
Well, he's the state chief financial officer, banker. He oversees the agency that manages state finances by investing public funds, issuing state and local bonds. Provides banking service for state and local government entities. He also is one of the 5 members of the Oregon Investment Council, which oversees the investment of Oregon's public pension fund, and one of 3 members of the State Land Board. And those 2 bodies do exercise a lot of control over some pretty important issues here in the state, with our $25 billion underfunded public pension fund.
Mm-hmm.
And, the State Land Board is involved in a variety of controversial decisions periodically, things like the Elliott State Forest and things like that.
An important position, but a pretty wonky one.
It is a pretty wonky one. The other thing the agency does, it administers the state's college savings program. And Reed has rolled out a program called Oregon Saves, which is an optional retirement savings program for Oregonians that don't have that option through their employer. And that's something that he, one of the things that he's been campaigning on, that he wants to broaden participation in that and, continue to, and it's been a pretty successful rollout. 70,000 Oregonians have participated so far and maybe saved $65 million towards their retirement, which, again, that's been one of his main accomplishments as treasurer, I guess.
So Reed, the incumbent, is seeming like he might have an easier road to victory this time. I mean, is that what it's looking like? Are there polls on this sort of thing? What do we know?
I haven't seen any polling on it, and I don't know that anyone would really bother to spend the money on it. I mean, he really does. He has the incumbency. He has so much more money that he has to spend on this, and again, the registration advantage that he has is enormous as well. Last time it was only a 2.5% margin. There are two independent candidates in the race again. Chris McHenry is a Progressive Party candidate. He's back on the ballot from 2016. And then Michael Marsh from the Constitution Party. I don't think they're going to draw as heavily as Chris Telford did last time, because she was, again, a fairly well-known candidate and, a kind of a legislative budget hawk, and had kind of a core constituency. We'll see. But, again, I think just the inherent advantages here go to Reed for sure.
We will know something in about 15 minutes, 13 minutes probably.
Indeed, we will.
This is probably one of those races where we may know something pretty early on in the evening. Is that what you're planning on?
I think that's the case. That is what I'm planning on. Again, and I've been watching the national election results come in here, and that's certainly been kind of a roller coaster. So,
how's that going? Because I've pretty well avoided that. So,
well, I think it looks a little bit more favorable for Trump than some of the polling would have indicated. North Carolina seems to be going his direction. Ohio's very tight. Some of the western counties in Pennsylvania are reporting, and they're coming in for Trump. Florida went his way, or is going his way. I think there's a lot still to be told, but based on some of the polling margins that were out there, it does look a little more favorable to him than one would have thought.
Well, I think we've all learned something about polls in the last 4 years. So
we have indeed.
Thank you so much, Ted. I will let you go and prepare for the closing of polls here in Oregon. And
okay,
thank you. And now we're going to talk with Lizzie Acker, who.
Yay! I was here the
back.
whole time. My hair looks a little less. Well, it was pretty messy before. The baby's asleep. She's not going to scream this time.
Oh, the baby's asleep. Okay. Well, I hope.
Yeah.
Hope she's having sound dreams.
I hope so too.
Lizzie, you are covering the shroom measure, the statewide
shroom measure. Yes, it's Measure 109, and this is legalizing psilocybin, which is the scientific term
psilocybin. Definitely
psilocybin,
that word.
Yeah.
Psilocybin?
Yeah. For magic mushrooms. Psilocybin.
Yeah, it's magic mushroom.
Psilocybin. It's magic mushroom. But it's not legalizing like we did with cannabis. It's legalizing in a therapeutic settings only, with facilitators in licensed facilities. And it wouldn't be like tomorrow everyone can go out and shroom.
Right. What are some of the restrictions that are on this proposed ballot measure?
Well, you could only do it in these licensed facilities, and only licensed manufacturers are allowed. People who are licensed or would be allowed to grow psilocybin. And there's going to be a 2-year period where the Oregon Health Authority would basically ramp up the program. So it would be overseen by the Oregon Health Authority. It's really considered a therapeutic program.
And so you would have to, you would have to be prescribed this.
Actually, no.
Oh.
At least that's not what it seems like. I'm sure that, the rules aren't really written yet. So I assume that this 2-year period when OHA figured it out, that would be one of the things that they would figure out. But I believe that the way it's written is basically anyone over the age of 21 who wants to do it in this therapeutic setting could do it.
Would this be a first in the country?
Absolutely. I mean, completely first. There are some cities and places that have decriminalized the possession of psilocybin. I think Denver and some other places, but this would be the first time it's actually legalized. It still would be a Schedule 1 controlled substance at a federal level, which is obviously, something that is the same with marijuana. So,
who is behind the introduction of this measure?
It's actually this couple, Sherry Eckert. Let me just see if I can remember her husband's name. They're married, and they're both Thomas, Sherry and Thomas Eckert. They're therapists in Beaverton, and they've actually been working on this for a long time. I first spoke with them in 2017, and they are therapists and very committed to the therapeutic potential of psilocybin. So there's been a lot of studies and stuff written about how psilocybin can be used to treat a lot of things, from like depression and PTSD. Those are really big ones. And so this could open up the door to more research into that if it passes. And it could also just mean a new form of treatment for people in Oregon.
Are there groups that have opposed this measure?
Yes, there are. I don't know too much about that, but no, I believe that I'm gonna look this up. You know who I'll tell you who didn't oppose it is Dr. Bronner's soap. They have been a huge supporter of this measure and donated basically over $1 million directly to the campaign, and then more through a group. But yes, I'm going to tell you who is opposed to this measure.
I did not mean to cut you off guard.
No, it's okay. I should have known that was a totally reasonable question. Samantha Swindler, a reasonable interviewer, would ask me.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting measure because I did read in your story, oddly, that the soap people have given a lot of funding to this.
Soap people are really into it. I mean, they're not just soap people, but they get behind a lot of political measures. Is what I'm saying. This isn't like their first dip into politics, but they are really, really supportive of psilocybin. And I actually spoke with the CEO. I think is the CEO. Maybe he has a hipper name than that. He is a Bronner, and he said it was personal for him that there's people in his family that maybe suffer from depression, I think. Anyway, don't know why I'm looking at the wrong story, Samantha. That's why it's taking me so long. But it's because I didn't write all of the stories about this. You'll be surprised to know.
Hey, there's a lot of news going on all the time, so I don't expect you to remember every single thing that every reporter at the Oregonian ever wrote about it. But I mean, this is an interesting measure.
Oregon psychiatry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, so it's the Oregon Psychiatric Physicians Association calls the proposal unsafe. But so yes, there are people who are opposed to it, and our own newspaper's editorial board. So
we'll know in about maybe 6 minutes or so.
Maybe, yeah.
It might take longer than that.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I think it's a really interesting measure because, once again, Oregon could do something that no other state has done. It's like kind of wild that in 2 years we could have facilities where people are therapeutically taking psilocybin. There's just nothing like it, really.
This might be one of those measures that people outside of Oregon are watching to see what happens. And again, something where we're sort of on the potential forefront of reconsidering how we look at and classify some drugs. So.
Right. Yeah, you got to wonder if people are looking at this and saying, "Oh, there's Oregon again," But maybe, maybe in 2 years we'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's so normal."
Could be. Thank you so much, Lizzie. I appreciate you stopping
you.
by. We're getting down to the wire in Oregon. It's like 5 minutes left before polls close. So
I got to get ready.
I will let you go and get ready. We are expecting, thank you so much, Lizzie. We're expecting results for some of the races to come in shortly after the polls close. Until then, we earlier talked to some voters who were going out and dropping off their ballots, and we have video and comments from them from earlier today. This is literally it, down to the wire, last 4 minutes to get to the ballot box. And until we have some results, let's hear from some Oregonians about why they voted.
I can't say I'm nervous. Do I say I'm a little anxious? Yes. The country's in a very awkward position right now, and I, like many, feel like this is going to be the vote of a lifetime. It can either redirect the ship or make it sink, in my opinion. My fear is if Trump continues to stay in office, in my opinion, I think it's going to turn the country on its ear.
I don't really want the current president to win, and I'm worried about a lot of possibilities of corruption as far as like what's going to happen, if it's going to make a difference. But I'm going to vote, try.
They say every election is the most important in our lifetime. I think this one actually is. I have never voted Democrat before, and this time around I'm voting for Biden-Harris because to me it's not even close. Very clear choice. When I signed up as Republican in high school, I did it because they were the party of personal responsibility, fiscal conservatism, strong national defense. And if you go down the line, every single one of those things, I think they've pretty much abandoned every single one of those things. The issues that were important to me as a Republican, they've basically gone down the toilet. I'm convinced that Donald Trump is only interested in doing what's best for Donald Trump and maybe his family. And I've been super disappointed that the Republicans in Congress have pretty much caved in to everything he wants to do. I'm worried about him and the Department of Justice and all of the levers of the federal government trying to manipulate the election in the favor of Trump. I'm hoping that it's an overwhelming win for Biden that's so clear-cut that even Donald Trump has to say, that's it, I'm done. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take an overwhelming vote, though.
I'm voting in Oregon City, and I feel great about it. I'm hopeful that the person I voted for is going to win. I supported President Trump. I'm a Republican. I think he's doing a great job, and I think our economy is going to come back, and I'm hopeful that all the other Americans are on my side. The pandemic didn't affect my vote, I don't think. I mean, people didn't like the way he ran things. I'm okay with how he ran things. It's here and it happens that way. I'm a religious person, I'm a Christian, and I think God's got a plan for everything. And the pandemic has been very bad. I think masks are a great thing, but I don't think that really made me think about who I was choosing.
Don't forget to sign your envelope. Everybody needs to vote.
I'm feeling a little bit of both, nervous and excited. You just never know what's gonna happen. So I'm a little on the edge this year. I would like to see the measure for free preschool for all. I am a single mother of 2 that had to pay for daycare that was really expensive. So I know with that will help a lot of mothers be able to be independent and don't have to receive government assistance, and they can work.
I'm just happy that I made it on time. I am just trying to be really zen about it. Obviously, I want it to go one way, so if it doesn't go that way, I feel like it's going to be a problem. And either way, I feel like there may be more violence than is already going on around the nation. So I'm a little nervous, I guess, yeah. I'm not voting for anyone, I'm voting against Trump. I just am still kind of in shock and awe that it even happened, that someone with his mannerisms and history and the things that he says, but this one just feels more like I have to watch it.
I'd say I'm more anxious. I think there's a lot more kind of on the line. This is a little bit more of an important election this year than in years past. Personally, I don't really like either of the two main candidates. I feel like we're kind of picking the lesser of two evils, but so I feel like I'm anxious either way.
I'm excited. I think that I'm hopeful that this will be a turning point for us as far as dealing with COVID, as far as dealing with the economy and international relations. This is a turning point for us, the United States. Coming on the heels of the demonstrations, this is a perfect time to sort of surge forward with social changes that are needed to make us a better country. Last election, I just had early on this sinking feeling, and I don't think that Trump will be elected this year. I think that Biden will be.
First and foremost, I'm just excited that this whole election season is kind of ending because it's been pretty crazy and there's been a lot of animosity towards both sides. And I'm just kind of excited for this all to be put to bed and we can all work together to make the world a better place. I don't know if people will react civilly if they don't know if their side's winning, and on both sides. I'm not saying one side versus the other, but I'm hoping it can be a clear-cut winner, but if it's not, my advice to everyone is stay calm and just let it work itself out, because violence isn't ever the answer.
I'm feeling a little nervous. I think I just have this idea that regardless of what we all put in there, he who must not be named is still gonna just get in the seat again, and then it's just gonna be like a crazy uprising, which maybe it needs to happen that way, but I don't feel assured that it's gonna go smoothly. Just with all the things that have gone down that seem really shady in Congress, and all the the judge and all of that, I don't feel I feel like we're just going to be outnumbered by the sketchiness of what they can get away with, and it doesn't seem like there's any repercussions. So it's almost like we're all just doing our best, and then there's still this giant crevasse of just you just gotta see what is gonna happen, but hopefully better. I feel excited because I just voted, so it's a good feeling to take that opportunity. So that's the excitement part. The nervousness will come with the results. I would say healthcare and women's rights is probably the most important to me. And yeah, I think that's what really sticks out to me. That's what I'm personally worried about.
I knew I didn't want Trump for president 4 years ago. All of the reasons I was concerned about him being president have been very thoroughly exercised. I mean, he's done everything that I was worried he would do, and then some. I'm just really concerned with the general state, with the racial inflammation that's happening. I absolutely don't think that this is a president that's been doing anything to kind of ease that or help that. It's been more than anything, he's been inflaming it. He's been making it more unsafe for people of color. And then the more recent is, sorry, I'm fried right now.
Hi, folks. I'm Samantha Swindler in the Oregonian newsroom. The polls have closed in Oregon. I can hear some shouting across the room where our reporters are. looking at results and getting ready to make some calls on things. I don't have anything to report to you at the moment, but I suspect I will very, very shortly. In the meantime, please just relax, calm yourself, and enjoy these wonderful kitten videos that we got graciously from the Oregon Humane Society.
Hey, work your magic, don't knock it over. Hi. Okay, everybody's gonna stay. Everybody's staying. Good job.
Here's all your friends.
Hi, folks. I'm Samantha Swindler, back again, reporting from the Oregonian newsroom. I've got Julie here with me. We are now getting some results for local races. We were just going to kind of update you guys quickly of what the Oregonian has called so far. Let's see. So the Oregonian is saying that we're calling the Portland Police Oversight Board measure as passing. In Portland, the Parks levy is passing or passes. We're going to go ahead and call the U.S. Senator race for Jeff Merkley, Democrat. I don't think it's a huge surprise there. Along with Attorney General for Ellen Rosenblum, also the Democrat, the incumbent. In measures, the Multnomah County tuition-free preschool tax passes. I'm just scrolling through the list here.
No, I've got a few if you want me to jump in,
yes,
Sam.
Please, jump in there.
Mingus Maps has defeated Chloe Udaly for Portland City Council. It's the second time an incumbent has been defeated in the last 4 years, which is pretty remarkable. The Measure 108, the tobacco tax, has passed. That covers tobacco products and vape products. The Portland Public Schools $1.2 billion, I believe, bond. We've called that as passed as well. And we have also called Oregon presidential race. Oregon has selected Joe Biden. And the AP just called the Washington governor's race for Jay Inslee.
On the statewide measures, yes, I can never remember how to pronounce it. Psilocybin. We're calling it as passing. So the shroom, the magic mushrooms thing is passing. Susan Bonamici will retain her U.S. House District seat. The Oregonian is calling Measure 110 drug decriminalization measure passing. I think you already mentioned the cigarette tax. And campaign finance limits, Measure 107 passes. What else are we seeing here? There's so much news coming in right now. So.
Yes. So Oregon, because we do all vote by mail, we count very quickly. So we have a lot of races being called very quickly after the polls close at 8 o'clock. I'm seeing that we have called the Secretary of State's race for Shemia Fagan, the Democrat. Portland 5-year tax levy to fund city parks has passed. I'm not sure if we mentioned that one previously.
The Metro payroll tax, that was kind of a big one. That one appears to not be passing. That one appears to be failing. I do not think we've officially called it. But it was in partial. I'm reading Andrew Thiene's story here. In partial returns, the measure was failing in all 3 metro counties. So not looking great for that one.
I think with that, we may be up to date unless something just came through on your end, Sam.
No, I'm sort of refreshing everything like everybody else. I will say that the Oregonian's election results page, where you can see the big graph of everything, you might be having trouble loading it because everybody is hitting refresh, refresh, refresh.
Right.
You can still look at the stories that are being posted on OregonLive.com in the latest column on the left-hand side of our homepage. You'll see the races that we've called. Tobias Reed wins re-election as Oregon State Treasurer. That just posted 3 minutes ago. We're also posting when we call a race in Oregon on Twitter at Oregonian POL. That's the Oregonian Politics Twitter handle.
We'll also be tweeting those from our main Oregonian account, which is just at Oregonian.
And I think that might be it as far as the ones that we can call immediately. Right. The rest will be waiting for more votes to be tallied. There's also in Clackamas County, we may not know some of those local races. As earlier reported, a ballot counting is basically stalled in Clackamas County because their envelope opener machine broke down. this evening, so they're expecting to have it fixed for tomorrow. But don't panic if you don't see election results out of Clackamas County coming just this evening. Julie, is there anything else that you're seeing?
Well, our producer, Teresa, just told me that we actually had a lot of new viewers jump in as we were going through some of the races. So before we sign off here, I thought maybe we could just hit some of the higher interest races quickly. Measure 26217, which is the Portland Police Accountability Measure, has passed. Mingus Maps has defeated incumbent Chloe Udaly on the Portland City Council. Measure 108, which is the tobacco and vape product tax, has passed. The Portland Public Schools bond has also passed. The Multnomah County tuition-free preschool bond passed. And Sam, there were a couple of others that you had that I did not.
Let's see. Forgive me, folks, if we are repeating things.
Yeah, I think people wanted us to repeat.
We're okay with repeating
They
stuff.
joined halfway through, so just make sure that we did a few of them.
Measure 107, campaign finance limits, that passes. Measure 108, cigarette tax, that passes. Measure 110, drug decriminalization, that passes. Let's see, Suzanne Bonamici wins her seat. I skipped measure 109. That's the magic mushrooms. That passes. Also, we are newly calling the Multnomah County Circuit Court judge race for Adrian Brown. That's a new call for us. You may notice that we have not called the race for Portland mayor. That one is still too close to call. In unofficial, incomplete numbers that have been released, Ted Wheeler is leading, but Sarah Iannarone has 40.54%, and there's quite a bit of write-ins, just over 12% write-ins so far. Again, we have not called that race. Is there anything else? There's like so much news happening that comes right at the same time. I see this one was not really a surprise. U.S. House District 2 for Cliff Bentz, the Republican. This was Greg Walden's seat, I believe.
Yes.
And Oregon House District 37, we're calling that for Rachel Prusik. That's the Democrat.
Looks like we just called the Multnomah Library expansion. That passed. And one that I meant to mention in my review of the ones we talked about before, we have called the Secretary of State's race for Shemia Fagan.
And again, we're posting stories on these races as we call them at Oregon Live. So if you don't want to watch us just read stuff, you can go to the website and see. We're also tweeting things as we call them on our Twitter handle at Oregonian. That's on Twitter. I think those are the most recent.
I think we are up to date with that library expansion.
Did you talk about? You talked about Secretary of State just now. Okay.
Just now.
Just now. So election night, folks. It's crazy. And we did say the Metro tax failed. So now we're officially calling it. I think I said it was failing in all three counties.
Yeah.
So
on its way to failing.
It is on. It's done. That doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think.
And it looks. Did we say DeFazio?
Yes, I believe you did. But
Okay.
good to remind folks if they are joining a little bit later.
Yeah, it looks like Peter DeFazio is pretty handily beating his opponent, Alex Scarlatos. So that is what we know at this time. I think that's the first big chunk of races that we'll be able to call in Oregon. I think we're going to take a little break from right now. We'll be back later. Andrew Thien will have some folks on later much later this evening, doing kind of an election roundtable with them. Look for that in a couple of hours. Oh, and I just see, I think we already did call this, but the story is up now about Tobias Reed. So if knowing that he won wasn't enough for you and you want to read about it, you can go to Oregon Live right now. I think that's it for us, Julie. I think we'll be signing off for the moment.
Yep.
And
we
check
will,
out the website.
Yes,
We'll
go
have
to
more news there.
OregonLive.com and we'll be back with more later.
All right. Thank you.